U.S. Senator Blunt. He's joining us. Of course, he is. Other lawmakers have been on the forefront to a degree of the sequestration fight. So, what's the mood there? I mean, I feel like, and I know that you know this, is you travel back and forth between the halls of Congress and the people here in the state of Missouri, just sort of a different perspective of things. What is it that people are talking about up there when it comes to sequestration?
Well, Nick, you're right, and I've actually been one of the advocates for we have to meet these spending caps. There's frankly no reason to have the line-by-line cutting if Congress would just do its job. If the Senate would vote on appropriations bills that added up to the amount of money that we agreed 18 months ago that would be the most money we would spend this year, then there'd be no line-by-line cutting. And certainly now, after a year and a half of the Senate not even bringing a single appropriations bill to the floor, even though the Appropriations Committee produced the bills and put them on Harry Reid's desk. I voted for cuts. I voted for some of these bills. I voted against some of these bills, but they were all on Harry Reid's desk. None of them came to the floor. So if we would do our job, this does not have to be painful. And frankly, it doesn't have to be painful anyway. There are things that can be cut that will make a difference, that don't mean that people who work for the federal government get furloughed and have a 20% pay cut the last 5 months of the year. And why is that? It's because the president in July and even the last 2 days of September was saying, spend the money that starts on the spending year October 1 like nothing is going to change, even though the law had been in place for over a year then. And so the spending cuts are going to happen. They need to happen, and they will happen without increased revenues, if I have anything to say about it. And frankly, this is a moment when I think I can make a difference in keeping our side focused on we've done enough with revenues. Now we need to stick to our guns on spending, and the leverage is shifted to our side because the law actually says we have to take these spending cuts unless we change the law, and I'm not for changing the law.
I want to ask you, I think to some people it seems like semantics, but it really makes a big deal in terms of the national discussion, the way people perceive it. And one of the things that I have felt that over the last several years that Democrats have done is change the language, and instead of raising taxes, they change it to revenue, because revenue is a good thing. That means there's more money for stuff. Taxes indicates to people that's our money. And I feel like even Republicans now have ceded that to Democrats, and they're using their language, a softer language, and instead of talking about taxes being raised, we utilize the word revenue. Why has there been that shift?
Well, I think you could defend that when you use it on some occasions where revenue means more than taxes. It means taxes. It means user fees. It means
yeah, but to people it's all the same. I mean, that's like, you know, if $20.
I'm not for any new taxes, and frankly, I'm not for any new revenues right now either. I think we have to get spending in line, and for the first time ever, we really have, again, the leverage on our side because the law's on our side. And you know, on the subject of taxes, the Bowles-Simpson plan, which is not nearly as good when you look at the line by line as it's been given some credit for, but saying that, it also says that there should be $3 of spending cuts for every dollar of increased money coming into the government. And since the president became president, he got $1 trillion of new taxes over 10 years as part of the health care bill, new taxes and fees and other things that add up to income to the federal government, and recently got $65 billion a year in by keeping that top bracket for people that make more than $400,000. And so that's $1.6 trillion of revenue. Let's see the 3 or 4 times that now in spending cuts. And if we do that, suddenly our economy will begin to grow, because to do that, you're going to have to get our long-term as well as our short-term obligations to where everybody understands that the United States of America can now pay its bills again, and will be able to for a long time.
You know, the sequestration, I think a lot of people felt that it would not go through, but according to reports, Boehner on the House side had a meeting with a lot of conservatives, and he said, look, you guys just stick with me on this thing, and there are a couple things that I promise in return. One is that he said, we'll let this sequester thing happen. I think that, I'm saying this to get sort of your thoughts on it, the Democrats didn't expect, I think they expected Boehner and Republicans to sort of cave because of fears that they would look bad, and Obama and McCaskill and others talking the doom and gloom and getting people all worried, and then, Boehner apparently, he stuck to his word, and they said, all right, this is going to go ahead and go through, and then you have Democrats sort of backpedaling a little bit, and it's not so bad, and people are realizing it. Are Democrats, are they worried about that? Were there some lawmakers that sort of bought into how bad it was going to be, or did they know the whole thing was just a scare tactic, and now they're thinking, great, now people realize they don't need government as much as we told them they do?
Well, I think the worst thing that could happen to the administration if in 2 or 3 weeks into this line-by-line cutting, that really people can't see that very much happened. The levels of government spending that we're talking about, there are things the government needs to do, like defend the country. Everybody gets that, but we need to do all those things in the smartest way rather than the dumbest way. So the administration, I think, has overplayed its hand. Just yesterday they announced that now they even said in the announcement, here at the beginning of the popular spring travel season, which is, by the way, most popular for school groups, for school students, we're gonna end the White House tours.
Yeah.
Well, the White House tour is self-guided. How many people does it take to do a self-guided tour?
In Washington?
We're gonna. But it doesn't. This is obviously that is trying to make it painful, just like if the meat inspector doesn't show up at the meat processing facility all over Missouri and people can't work that day, because that's the one federal employee that has to show up for everybody else to go to work. Not at all food processing, because only at meat processing. The USDA has to send that person. And by the way, when the weather's bad, that person is always supposed to do everything they can to get there. And I'm going to insist that that person get there, or I'm going to know why. And I've written to Secretary Vilsack about this. If they start saying some employee can't come, and that means that 30,000 or so Missourians, one day every couple of weeks, don't get to go to work, hardworking families, while some agriculture department person's attending a conference somewhere, this is going to be a huge problem. I've told Secretary Vilsack that. In fact, I'm filing legislation either this week or early next week that requires them to prioritize employees based on health and safety and other people's jobs, and those employees have to be the employees that show up for work first.
We're talking with U.S. Senator Blunt. Do you think that sort of thing matters? And it should, obviously, but it just seems as if this administration, they just ignore stuff like that. There are certain aspects of the executive branch that are required when it comes to submitting things, and they just don't do it.
I think there is a callousness about people that go to work every day in this administration that is hard to fathom. A lack of understanding of how critical it is if you're constantly throwing obstacles out there in the way of job creation, like this constant talk of higher taxes. I wouldn't mind at all looking at the tax code, eliminating the things in the tax code that don't make sense, and reducing the rates. But there is enough revenue coming out of the economy, enough taxes coming out of the economy to the federal government now. But we need to have certainty, and whether it's the utility bill, and by the way, the new nominee at EPA is going to be as bad as the current administrator, I'm afraid. But whether it's the utility bill or the regulator or the taxes, or just knowing whether or not the one federal employee that has to show up where you work for you to work that day is going to show up. These things hold our economy back, and I'm constantly frustrated by the administration's failure to seem to understand the most basic things that people have to deal with for their life to work and for their job to work.
I got to tell you, I think from a standpoint of communicating to the American people, that Republicans have had a huge gift in that sense dropped on them, and that is with the analysis showing that in 2013 we are going to have more revenue than we've ever had come into the government since the history of the country, because it seems like the argument when it comes to the budget right now and how to deal with it is we need more revenue versus we need to slow down or cut spending. And it sort of, when you have one side saying, well, the problem is revenue, when you have dropped in your lap this thing that says, no, actually, we have more revenue than we've ever had, that's a pretty powerful tool, I think.
Well, I think that's right, Nick. It is a powerful tool. The fact that in most of these departments, spending still goes up a little bit, not maybe the way they had planned on it going up, but still goes up a little bit. The fact that in the 4 years President Obama's been president, federal spending has increased by 19%. We're talking about a 2.5% cut if you look at the entire spectrum of federal spending. And so that means there's still 16.5% more money than the federal government was spending when President Obama became president just 4 years ago. You'd have to really look hard where you and I live to find very many families that are spending 16.5% more money than they spent the day Barack Obama became president, because their incomes have been held back by a sluggish economy. And by the way, when you send the right signs, look at the stock market yesterday. Believe me, if the stock market would have had its lowest day ever or its biggest drop ever instead of its highest, the Obama administration would be saying, see, this sequestration, people are concerned that there's not going to be enough government spending.
Yeah, you're right.
And you're not hearing any report or anybody else saying, oh, what an incredible reaction to the fact that people are looking at government holding the line on spending and the stock market goes up. It may go back down, but believe me, if it would have gone down yesterday, there would have been a press conference at the White House talking about how slowing down spending was ruining our economy.
That's a good point. Absolutely right. Final question. Fox News is reporting that President Obama is going to be inviting Republican senators to a dinner. Is that something that you guys have caught wind of yet, or is that just news to everyone?
Well, that would be news to me, and it could be that I'm just not one of those Republicans that's going to be invited to that dinner.
I suspect you will be.
I don't know that I will, but I think it's a good idea for the president to reach out and try to create not only relationships with the people that he has to work with to get things done, but also to begin to understand that everything, even though he's president of the United States, is not going to be done just the way he wants it done. And his option is to do nothing or to figure out what it takes to lead and get a Republican House of Representatives and a Senate controlled by the Democrats to put something on his desk that everybody believes is the right way forward.
Well, I'd like to think that's what would come out of it. However, I'm a little cynical when it comes to him. Senator Blunt, listen, I really appreciate it, and you're welcome here anytime.
Hey, Nick, great to talk to you. Thanks for what you do every day.
All right,
Bye-bye.
Take care.